The twin suns hung low above a dying desert world, their heat turning the sky into a sheet of burning gold. A lone human named Ethan Hale walked slowly through the endless dunes, his boots sinking in the powder-fine sand. He had been traveling for days, searching for the ruins of an ancient alien city said to hold forgotten technology, something that could help Earth recover after the long wars. His water was almost gone, his scanner nearly dead, and his hope fading with the light. Yet he kept walking, guided only by the whisper of the wind and the faint signal flickering on his wrist console. As he climbed another ridge of sand, a strange sight caught his eyes. Among the broken stones of a collapsed temple lay a small figure wrapped in faded robes. At first, Ethan thought it was another statue buried by time, but then the figure moved, weakly, like a dying flame. He hurried closer, brushing away the dust, and gasped. It was an alien elder, her skin pale green and cracked like ancient glass, her eyes half closed, her breathing shallow. She looked fragile, smaller than he expected, her hands trembling as she tried to lift her head. "Water," she whispered in a voice that sounded like dry leaves. Ethan froze for a moment, remembering the warnings he had heard at the last outpost. The locals had told him, "Do not touch the ancients. They are cursed. Their kind brings ruin." But as he watched her struggling to breathe, he felt something deeper move inside him, something human. Without thinking, he took out his last flask and knelt beside her. He held the container to her lips, letting her drink the last of his water. The elder's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly with silver light. She stared at Ethan for a long moment, as if she was looking through him rather than at him. Then she smiled, a weak but peaceful smile. "Kindness," she whispered, the word strange yet familiar, after so long. Her hand reached out and touched his wrist console, and suddenly the screen blinked alive, displaying symbols he had never seen before. A pattern of stars appeared, swirling like a living map. Ethan felt a chill run through him, but he did not pull away. He had the sense that he was witnessing something sacred, something older than any human empire. The elder closed her eyes again, exhaustion overtaking her. Ethan looked around. The ruins stretched for miles, silent and lifeless. No one would help her. No one even knew she was here. He sighed, wiped the sweat from his face, and gently lifted her in his arms. Her body was light, almost weightless, as if she was made of air and memory. The suns were setting now, painting the desert in shades of crimson and violet. In the distance, the wind carried a faint echo, the sound of engines. Ethan glanced up and saw small lights moving across the horizon. Alien patrol ships, scanning the sands for something or someone. He ducked behind a broken wall, clutching the elder close, his heart pounding. He didn't know why he was doing this, only that leaving her behind felt wrong. The elder stirred slightly, her hand tightening around his sleeve. "Do not let them find me," she whispered, before falling back into silence. Night came fast on that world, cold and sharp as glass. Ethan found a small chamber inside the ruins and laid her down, covering her with his jacket. He looked at her face, peaceful now, almost glowing in the pale starlight. Who was she? Why did the patrols hunt her? What was that strange light she awakened in his console? He had more questions than answers, but one truth was clear in his heart. Helping her felt right, even if it cost him everything. As he leaned back against the cold stone wall, exhaustion washed over him. The desert wind howled outside like a living thing, carrying whispers in a language he couldn't understand. The stars above seemed to burn brighter, their light reflecting in the strange symbols still glowing on his wrist device. He didn't know that this night, this one act of mercy, would change not only his fate, but the fate of humanity itself. For in the ruins of a forgotten world, a single human heart had reignited the legacy of the stars. The night was cold and endless, but Ethan did not sleep. The stars above the broken ceiling glimmered like eyes watching from the void. Beside him, the alien elder lay still, her breathing shallow but steady. Ethan watched the strange crystal amulet hanging around her neck, glowing faintly with soft blue light. He could feel its pulse echoing faintly inside his chest, like the rhythm of a distant drum. He had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but nothing like this. The light seemed alive, whispering shapes and memories through his mind. When he closed his eyes, he saw visions. Floating cities made of glass, great silver ships sailing through stars, and creatures of light weaving patterns across the cosmos. Each vision felt ancient, sacred, filled with beauty and pain. He opened his eyes quickly, his breath shaky. "What are you?" he murmured under his breath, staring at the old woman's face. But she gave no answer, only a faint smile in her sleep, as if she had heard him from some deep dream. At dawn, the desert came alive again. The twin suns rose slowly, painting the sky in gold and red. Ethan packed his gear and prepared to move. He knew the patrol ships would return, and staying here meant death. When he leaned down to lift her, her eyes opened, glowing softly with silver light. "You should not have helped me," she said in a voice calm but ancient. "They will come for you now." Ethan smiled tiredly. "They were already coming. I just gave them a reason." The elder studied him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she reached for his wrist, her fingers thin but strong. "You have a kind heart," she whispered. "And for that, the stars will remember your name." Before Ethan could reply, she placed her hand over the amulet, and light spilled from it like liquid fire. The ruins around them trembled as if the earth itself recognized her power. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until Ethan could barely hear his own thoughts. The symbols on his console came alive again, rearranging themselves into star patterns, coordinates, and unknown languages. "What is this?" Ethan shouted, shielding his eyes from the brightness. The elder's voice echoed in his mind, not through sound, but through thought. "These are the memories of the star weavers," she said. "We were once the shapers of galaxies, the builders of light and life, and now I am the last." Her words filled his mind with images, a civilization of beings made of both flesh and energy, who could speak to the stars and bend creation itself through compassion and song. He saw their fall too, endless wars that burned the heavens, betrayal, and silence that followed their extinction. The elder, Malara, watched him carefully as he struggled to understand. "You humans," she said slowly, "carry something we lost long ago." Ethan frowned. "Lost what?" She smiled. "Mercy." He looked at her, confused but moved. "I only did what anyone would do," he said quietly. Malara shook her head gently. "No, not anyone, not anymore." She reached into her robes and handed him a small shard of glowing crystal. "This is a fragment of the loom," she said. "Our creation engine, a piece of the universe that listens to the heart of whoever holds it." Ethan turned it in his hand, the surface smooth but warm, pulsing softly with light. As he held it, it reacted to his touch, sending gentle waves of energy through his skin. He saw flashes of stars being born, planets forming, oceans shimmering with new life. It was creation itself, alive in his palm. He felt awe and fear at the same time. "What do you expect me to do with this?" he whispered. Malara's gaze softened. "Protect it, learn from it, and when the time comes, give it life again." The sound of engines roared in the distance, breaking the fragile peace. Ethan looked toward the horizon, dust clouds rising, patrol ships closing in. "They've found us," he said quickly, helping her to her feet. Malara nodded, calm as the stars. "Then we must go to the heart of the ruins, the Temple of Light. It will hide us." Ethan threw her arm over his shoulder and began to move. The ground trembled again, as if awakening from a long sleep. The symbols on his wrist console flickered brighter, guiding his steps like a living map. As they disappeared into the dunes, Malara glanced back at the horizon. Her ancient eyes reflected both sorrow and hope. "The galaxy will not understand what you've done," she whispered softly. "But one day, they will thank you." Ethan didn't hear her words, but the meaning echoed through his mind like a promise written in starlight. The amulet's glow merged with the rising sun, painting the desert with shades of silver and fire. And so, the human and the last star weaver vanished into legend, one carrying mercy, the other carrying memory, neither knowing that the fate of humanity had already begun to change. The desert wind howled through the broken city as Ethan helped Malara across the shifting sands. The twin suns burned above them, but the cold fear inside his chest was stronger than the heat. Behind them, faint dots in the sky grew larger. The patrol ships were closing in. Each hum of their engines echoed like a death drum in the air. Ethan's mind raced, his heart pounding as he tried to remember the path the console had shown him. The glowing lines on his wrist screen twisted like living veins, leading them deeper into the ruins. Malara's steps were weak, her breathing shallow, yet her eyes burned with steady light. "Keep moving," she whispered softly. "They must not find the loom." Ethan nodded, even though he didn't fully understand what she meant. He only knew that she carried something ancient, something powerful enough that soldiers would kill to control it. The ground trembled slightly, dust falling from the shattered towers around them. He tightened his grip on her arm and pushed forward through a collapsed archway. From above came a blinding beam of blue light, scorching the sand just meters away. The patrol ships had spotted them. Ethan cursed under his breath and ducked behind a fallen pillar, pulling Malara with him. She placed a trembling hand on the ground and whispered something in her alien tongue. A faint shimmer appeared around them like a veil of mist. The air thickened, the light from the ships bending strangely. "They cannot see us now," she said quietly, "for a few moments only." Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "You can cloak us?" She smiled weakly. "Only as long as the stars remember me." He helped her stand again, and they slipped through the ruins like ghosts. The heat shimmered around them, the ships circling above like vultures searching for prey. Ethan's boots crunched on ancient tiles marked with strange circular symbols. Everywhere he looked, carvings glowed faintly with the same blue light as her amulet. It felt like walking through the memories of another civilization. And though the air was dry and still, he could almost hear voices whispering in forgotten harmony. After what felt like hours, they reached a great stairway leading down into the sand. At its base stood a massive stone gate covered in silver vines of energy. Malara's hand trembled as she touched the surface. The carvings lit up, one by one, like constellations being born. "This is the heart chamber," she said softly. "Our last refuge, and your first trial." Ethan hesitated, unsure what she meant, but the sound of descending engines behind them left no time for questions. He grabbed her hand and pulled her inside as the gate slowly parted with a deep, echoing hum. The chamber beyond was vast, filled with suspended crystals floating in the air. Blue and gold energy ran between them like rivers of light. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. The beauty was unlike anything human hands could create. "This is what remains of the Star Weavers," Malara whispered. "Our thoughts, our songs, our lives, stored in light." She walked to the center of the room and placed her amulet on a small pedestal. Instantly, the crystals began to hum, their light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Ethan took a step back, his hand instinctively gripping the shard she had given him. It glowed in response, resonating with the chamber's light. He felt something awaken inside him again, warmth, clarity, and something deeper. A connection, not just to her, but to the space itself. He could feel the thoughts of the past brushing against his mind. Images of towering cities, of beings who wove the very stars into harmony. And then, just as suddenly, the connection broke, replaced by pain. The roof trembled as explosions sounded above, shaking dust from the ceiling. "They found us," Ethan said quickly, looking toward the gate. The cloaking veil had failed, and now the soldiers were storming the ruins. Their voices echoed through the corridors, mechanical and cold. Malara turned to him, her face calm despite the chaos. "You must protect the loom," she said. "If they take it, everything will end." Ethan looked around desperately. "How? I can't fight an army." The elder smiled faintly. "You won't have to." She raised her hands, and the air around her began to shimmer. The crystals flared brighter, their light wrapping around her like a storm of stars. The energy surged toward Ethan, surrounding him in warmth and pressure. His body shook, his vision blurring as the shard in his hand melted into his chest. He cried out, the light blinding and endless. When the brilliance faded, Malara was gone. Only her voice remained, soft in his mind. "The gift is yours now, child of Earth," she whispered. "Run while you still can." Ethan stood in silence, his heart racing, his body still glowing faintly with alien light. He looked toward the gate, where enemy soldiers shouted and advanced. And for the first time, he felt no fear, only purpose. He turned, and the crystals around him moved as if alive, forming a path deeper into the ruins. The patrols stormed the chamber, But by then, Ethan Hale had already vanished into legend. A human carrying the last spark of the stars, hunted by a galaxy that would soon learn the power of mercy. The echo of explosions faded into the distance as Ethan stumbled deeper into the glowing corridors. His breathing was heavy, his body trembling from the strange energy flowing through his veins. Every heartbeat sent waves of light rippling across his skin, faint and blue like starlight. He didn't know what Malara had done to him, only that her voice still lingered in his mind, soft, ancient, and filled with sorrow. The gift is yours now, protect it. The tunnel ahead opened into a vast underground chamber. Crystals hung like frozen suns from the ceiling, humming with power. The walls were carved with spirals and symbols that pulsed in rhythm with Ethan's heartbeat. When he touched one of the markings, light surged outward, forming shapes in the air, constellations, stars, planets spinning slowly in orbits. He felt their gravity, their warmth, as if the entire galaxy had come alive inside the room. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Visions flooded his mind again. Malara's people weaving energy through their hands, bending creation into harmony, building life across countless worlds. Then the visions shifted to fire, war, and betrayal. The same beauty turned to destruction as the Star Weavers were hunted by their own creations. He saw their downfall, cities falling, stars dimming, voices fading into silence. And finally, Malara herself, walking alone through endless ruins, carrying the last spark of her dying race. Ethan gasped and opened his eyes. The visions faded, but the ache in his chest remained. The amulet's light had fused into him, its pulse now beating with his own. He could feel the hum of energy in the air, the slow rhythm of the world beneath his feet. It was alive, and it was listening to him. He stood slowly, testing his strength. The cuts on his arms had healed, the pain in his legs gone. When he moved his hands, trails of faint light followed his fingers, bending and shaping the air like threads of silk. He stared in disbelief. Malara's gift was not just a symbol, it was power. Power to connect, to heal, to shape reality itself. But with it came weight, the heavy knowledge that this gift was not meant to destroy. It was meant to restore. Above the chamber, faint rumbles echoed. The soldiers were still searching. He could hear their metallic footsteps and the hiss of plasma rifles. He knew they would soon find their way down. He had to move, but his mind was torn. He wanted to run, yet something deep within urged him to stay. The gift was calling, guiding him towards something unfinished. Following the light patterns on the wall, Ethan reached a small circular platform in the center of the chamber. It was covered in glowing lines that formed an intricate web. As he stepped onto it, the entire room awakened. The crystals above spun slowly, their hum deepening into a melodic vibration that resonated through his bones. A beam of pure light shot down from the ceiling, surrounding him in a column of brilliance. He closed his eyes, and Malara's voice filled his mind again. "You are the bridge, Ethan Hale," she said gently, "between what was lost and what must rise again. Your heart opened the loom. Your mercy reawakened what even gods forgot." He saw her standing before him, not as the frail elder he rescued, but as a being of light and beauty, her form shimmering like living starlight. "You must learn to listen," she said, "not to command, but to understand." Ethan tried to speak, but the words came out as thoughts. "What happens now?" She smiled softly. "Now, you learn to be what we once were." The light around him grew stronger. Energy rushed into his body, filling every cell with warmth and pressure. He felt the air move with his breath, the stone hum under his feet, the dust swirl at his will. He raised his hand, and the energy obeyed, lifting a shattered rock and suspending it in midair. It felt natural, almost easy. He laughed under his breath, both amazed and terrified. "Malara," he whispered, "what have you done to me?" Her voice faded, soft and kind. "I have not changed you, child. I have only reminded you of what you already are." Then the vision faded, the beam dimmed, and the crystals quieted. Ethan stood alone in the still chamber, the glow around him fading into gentle light. He looked at his hands, no longer the hands of a wanderer, but of something more, something connected to every living thing around him. Above, The faint echo of engines reminded him that danger was not gone. He took one last look at the now silent loom and whispered, "I'll protect it, Malara. I promise." As he walked toward the exit tunnel, the crystals dimmed one by one. The last to fade glowed faintly in the shape of a handprint, hers. And as Ethan vanished into the desert beyond, the ancient chamber sealed itself, guarding the secret of the Star Weavers once again. But this time, their legacy lived, not in the stars, but in the heart of one human whose desert winds had grown stronger by dawn, carrying whispers of war through the endless dunes. Ethan stood at the edge of the ruins, his heart heavy and his mind caught between fear and wonder. He could still feel the energy of the loom inside him, gentle, alive, and waiting. It wasn't a weapon, he knew that now. It was something far older, far purer. But the galaxy outside would never see it that way. The silence broke when the first ship appeared over the horizon, a black carrier cutting through the sandstorm like a blade. Ethan narrowed his eyes as rows of alien soldiers descended, their armor gleaming under the suns. He could see the symbol on their banners, the mark of the Zerith Dominion, the same empire that had hunted Malara's kind to extinction. He clenched his fists, feeling the energy stir beneath his skin like lightning waiting to strike. They surrounded him quickly, weapons aimed. A tall alien commander stepped forward, his voice harsh and metallic. "Human, you stand on sacred ground," he said. "You carry forbidden power, surrender it or die." Ethan looked at their cold faces, remembering the kindness that had started it all. Malara's words echoed in his mind. Mercy is the only thing they cannot destroy. He took a slow breath and raised his empty hands. "I don't want to fight," he said, his voice calm. "But I won't let you have her gift." The commander sneered and gestured to his troops. Energy blasts filled the air, striking the sand around Ethan. He closed his eyes, and instinct took over. The energy within him surged, rising like a living storm. The air shimmered, the sand lifted into spirals, and in one blinding moment, every blast turned to dust before touching him. The soldiers froze, their armor crackling under invisible pressure. Ethan spoke softly, his voice trembling. "Stop this, please." But they didn't listen. Fear turned to rage, and the commander lunged forward, blade glowing red. Ethan stepped aside without thinking, his movement guided by something unseen. He reached out, and the weapon dissolved into harmless particles of light. The soldiers fell back, shouting, some dropping to their knees in terror. He didn't attack, he didn't even raise his hand again. Yet the ground trembled beneath him, responding to his heartbeat. The loom's energy wasn't about destruction, it was about balance, about choice. And now the choice was his. The commander growled, his pride wounded. "You think mercy will save you," he spat. "The galaxy devours the weak." Ethan's eyes met his, glowing faintly with silver light. "Then it's time someone teaches the galaxy what true strength looks like," he said quietly. Before the commander could speak again, a sudden explosion tore through the air. A second wave of ships descended, larger and heavier, their engines shaking the dunes. Ethan's vision blurred as he realized what they were doing. They were bombarding the ruins. They wanted to bury the loom forever. He looked back at the ancient temple, the one Malara had died to protect. The walls shimmered faintly as the first bomb struck, sending a shockwave through the sand. Ethan fell to his knees, pain ripping through his chest, as if the temple itself was part of him. He could hear her voice again, faint but clear. "Do not let their hatred break you." He pressed his hands against the ground, the energy within him surging like a tidal wave. Light burst from beneath his fingers, spreading across the dunes in radiant patterns. The shock wave reversed, turning fire into wind, metal into dust, and hate into silence. When the smoke cleared, the soldiers were gone, their ships reduced to twisted wrecks half buried in the sand. Ethan stood alone, his eyes dim and his strength fading. The loom's power was too much for one man to bear. He felt his heartbeat slowing, his vision darkening. But deep within the silence, he felt warmth, her warmth. Malara's presence brushed against his thoughts, gentle as starlight. "You kept your promise," she whispered, "and the stars will remember." He smiled weakly, falling to his knees as the twin suns rose higher. The light wrapped around him, soft and golden. He thought of Earth, of the people who would never know what happened here. of the kindness that had started all of it. The loom pulsed once more inside his chest, sending a wave of energy across the desert. The ruins glowed for a moment, then fell silent forever. And with that light, Ethan Hale vanished from the world, leaving behind only the story of a man who chose mercy over fear. Days later, scavengers found the battlefield empty and silent. All they saw were patterns of light burned into the sand, shaped like two hands reaching for each other. No one could explain it. No one dared to disturb it. But those who saw it whispered of the human who defied the galaxy, a man who carried the gift of a dying race and paid the price of compassion, a man who proved that even in a cold universe, kindness could still set the stars aflame. The desert slept beneath two silent suns, its golden dunes stretching endlessly under the wind. Nothing moved there, no sound, no life, only the whisper of shifting sands. Then, without warning, the ground trembled softly. A faint blue light shimmered beneath the surface, tracing the shape of a man buried beneath the dust. Moments later, Ethan Hale opened his eyes, his lungs filled with air that tasted like starlight and fire. The world above him glowed faintly blue, as though reality itself was breathing. He rose slowly, grains of sand falling from his shoulders. He remembered falling, the blinding flash, the pain, and Malara's final words echoing through his fading mind. Yet now, he was alive, not as before. Something within him had changed forever. The wind around him danced in rhythm with his heartbeat. When he lifted his hand, the air shimmered with light, bending like water. He could feel everything. The pulse of the planet beneath his feet, the energy of the ruins far below, even the faint echo of life miles away. It wasn't power he felt, it was awareness, connection, like every grain of sand was part of his skin. For the first time, he understood what the Star Weavers truly were. They didn't control creation, they listened to it, and it listened back. He looked toward the horizon where the Dominion ships once stood, now nothing but melted remains half buried in the dunes. He could still sense faint traces of their rage, their fear, their memories hanging in the air like smoke. He knelt and touched the sand, closing his eyes. "I don't want this to be war," he whispered softly. "I just want peace." The desert responded with a warm gust of wind, swirling gently around him as if to say it understood. As he stood again, something bright flashed above him. He looked up to see a fleet of small vessels descending through the sky. Human ships this time, their metallic bodies glinting in the twin sunlight. They had come searching for him, drawn by the strange readings spreading across the sector. Ethan watched silently as the first ship landed nearby, kicking up waves of sand. Armed soldiers stepped out, their expressions wary, their scanners beeping wildly. One of them shouted, "Identify yourself." Ethan didn't answer at first. He could sense their fear, the same fear that always followed the unknown. He wanted to tell them he was still human, that he hadn't become a monster. But when he saw his reflection in the visor of a soldier's helmet, his breath caught. His eyes glowed faintly silver, his veins lit with a soft pulse beneath his skin. He looked otherworldly, half human, half light. He realized what Malara meant when she said he was the bridge. He was no longer only of Earth, but of the stars as well. "I'm Ethan Hale," he said calmly, his voice steady. "I'm not your enemy." The soldiers hesitated, exchanging glances. One of them whispered, "Sir, he's emitting the same energy as the ruins." Their commander stepped forward cautiously. "What happened here?" he demanded, his tone a mix of awe and suspicion. Ethan looked toward the shattered horizon. "She gave us a second chance," he said simply, "don't waste it." Before they could ask more, the ground beneath them began to hum. The ruins glowed faintly again, responding to Ethan's presence. The soldiers backed away in fear, raising their weapons. Ethan raised his hand peacefully. "You don't need those," he said gently. "It's over." The weapons powered down automatically, their energy cells flickering out like dying embers. The men stared in disbelief, unsure whether to see him as savior or threat. Ethan turned and walked toward the rising suns. Each step left a faint trail of light behind him, fading softly into the wind. The commander called out, "Where are you going?" Ethan paused for a moment, glancing back with a calm smile. "To find others like her," he said, "to make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." Then he kept walking until his figure blurred with the heat, disappearing into the desert haze. As the soldiers watched him vanish, one of them whispered, "What was he?" The commander lowered his weapon slowly and replied, "He was human. But now, he's something the galaxy has never seen before." Above them, the desert shimmered with faint light. Stars flickered in daylight, as if bowing in respect. For the Star Weaver's gift had awakened not just a man, but a new beginning. And somewhere in the deep silence of space, Malara's voice echoed once more. The stars remember kindness, always. Years passed since the day the desert swallowed the ruins of the Star Weavers. Yet the story of a lone human who vanished beneath twin suns refused to fade. Across colonies and outposts, travelers whispered of Ethan Hale, the man who walked into the sands and came back touched by light. Some called him a myth, others a warning. But those who had looked into his eyes knew the truth. Ethan wandered from world to world, never staying long. He healed drought-stricken lands, repaired broken machines with a single touch, and calmed storms that had raged for decades. Wherever he went, life began to bloom again. The people didn't understand how he did it. He never spoke of the loom or of Malara's sacrifice. He only said, "Be gentle with what you do not understand." And those words alone changed more than any weapon could. On one distant planet, a war had raged for generations. Two alien factions fought over water, turning oceans into graves. Ethan arrived quietly, walking between the armies as plasma fires streaked the sky. The soldiers aimed their weapons, but when he raised his hand, every gun melted into dust. He stood in silence until both sides lowered their heads. Then he whispered, "Mercy will save you before victory ever will." They listened, and for the first time in a century, the battle ended without blood. News spread faster than light. The galaxy began to call him the Human Weaver. Some believed he was the rebirth of an ancient god. Others saw him as a threat to the balance of power. Empires sent spies to capture him, but they always failed. He never fought them. He simply vanished, appearing again wherever suffering was greatest. It was as if the stars themselves guided his steps. One night, as he stood beneath the pale glow of 3 moons, he heard a familiar voice within his thoughts. It was soft, warm, filled with love. "Ethan," Malara whispered, "you have done what even we could not." He smiled faintly, looking at the sky. "I only did what you taught me," he said. "I listened." The stars shimmered in reply, their light bending into patterns of spirals and threads, the same shape carved into the ancient ruins long ago. He realized then that the loom was not just inside him. It was alive across the galaxy, growing through acts of compassion, spreading like light through darkness. He returned to Earth after decades of silence. Humanity had changed. The wars were fewer, the skies clearer, and people spoke of a new belief born from the stars. They called it the way of the gentle hand. Ethan walked among them unseen, his hair silver, his eyes glowing softly. He saw children playing under banners of peace, saw soldiers rebuilding homes instead of destroying them. He knew Malara's dream had finally taken root. But even peace carries its price. As years turned into centuries, Ethan's body grew faint, his form flickering between flesh and light. He could feel himself fading, his energy slowly returning to where it belonged. He climbed a hill overlooking a quiet valley filled with flowers that shimmered like stars. There he knelt, resting his hand on the soil. "I kept the promise," he whispered, and they remembered. A soft breeze brushed his face, gentle, familiar, and kind. He looked up at the night sky one last time and smiled. "I was gentle with her," he said softly, "and she was gentle with the universe." Light enveloped him completely, spreading outward like dawn breaking across the void. For a moment, the stars brightened all at once, as though the galaxy itself had taken a deep breath. When the glow faded, Ethan Hale was gone. Only a field of starlit flowers remained, swaying under the endless sky. Pilgrims would later visit that place, calling it the Garden of the Last Weaver. They said the stars seemed closer there, whispering stories of kindness to those who listened with open hearts. And somewhere beyond the edge of time, in a realm made of light and memory, Malara's voice echoed once more. "Humanity has finally learned. Ethan," she said gently, "you didn't just save one life. You saved every future." And through the infinite stretch of stars, two souls, one alien and one human, shone together. Their light weaving across the galaxies, eternal and pure. A reminder to all who would ever look up at the night sky. That compassion is the thread that binds every world. And that one act of mercy can change the fate of the universe.